Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Long time no see. Today's video is going to be my September and October reading wrap up. I did not end up filming one for September because I only read 3 books and I didn't want to make like a 3-minute video on the 3 books I read. So I thought it'd be perfect to just combine the 2 months. I read 3 books in September and then 5 in October, which for me 5 is pretty good. That's like about average. And I'm hoping that November and December I'll be able to read more since I'll be on, like I'll have breaks for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So cross my fingers that I get a lot of books in. It also really helps when I'm listening to an audiobook. So I did listen to an audiobook. I think one of them was an audiobook. One of them was an audiobook. Which maybe I'll read another audiobook on my phone because that really helps. That way when I'm like doing chores or whatever, I can just listen to it. So enough rambling. Without further ado, we will start out with the books that I read in September. The first book that I read in September was The Kiss Curse, and I rated this a 4.25 stars. I really liked this book. So I read The Ex-Hex last year, and I believe I rated that a 4 stars. But I like this one even more. So if you don't know, The Ex-Hex and The Kiss Curse it's actually a trilogy, and the third one just recently came out. But it is a trilogy and is about these witches that live in like this witchy town. It's called like Graves Glen, I think. Graves Glen. And so each story like follows a different girl in the town with a different guy, and basically they're all witches, and so there are real people, but there are 2 like kind of rivalry witch covens. And so the first book is between Phoebe and Rhett, I think is his name. But basically she is a professor at this like witch college, and then he is part of this other coven who live in Scotland or Britain, somewhere in Britain. And then the second one, I don't know if I can tell y'all who it's between because it might be a spoiler if you haven't read the first. But basically The Kiss Curse is about 2 people from the first book. And I really liked the Ex-Hex, the first one, but I liked this one even more because to me, I found Gwen, who's the main character in this book, like much more interesting than I found Vivi. I just love Gwen's character so much, and she's so like unintentionally funny. And so the whole book, I love it. It's just a comfort book for me. This entire series, it's just like, it's funny and it's cozy and it's witchy and it's all the vibes you want in the September and October. So I'm definitely gonna wait till next year to read the 3rd book, just because now it's like October's passed, and so I feel like I won't enjoy it as much because it's really seasonal for me. And I really liked it. It's very cozy. There's like little mysteries in each of them that you kind of figure out at the end. It is adult. It kind of reads like young adult, but there is like adult content in them. But it's really good. It's really sweet. It's fluffy. Okay, next I read The Thief by Megan Whalen Turner. I think I rated this a 3.75. Yes, I rated this a 3.75. Basically, The Thief is about this thief named Jen, and he's in prison because he was bragging about being a thief to everyone. And so then the King's Magus comes and gets him from the prison and says, "You're gonna come with me because I've heard you're the best thief around, and you're gonna steal this gem so that we can give it to the king." And so they go on this whole journey to get the gem that they're looking for, and you're kind of following them on this journey, and then you're learning about like the history of the of the countries and stuff as you go. And I'm not gonna spoil it, but you learn some more at the end. There is kind of a plot twist at the end, which really got me. I remember I was reading it and I was just like, no way. Like it all made sense. It was like I didn't even think of it because you don't think there's gonna be a plot twist, but there is. But it was really good. I really liked the ending. So a little slow at times. It is a series. I don't think I'll continue the series because I didn't get like immersed in like the world of it. I loved the main character Jen, and then I loved the ending. So if you're looking for like a quick little fantasy book, I think this is a good book to if you want to get into fantasy, because I've been trying to get into fantasy, and this actually is like the first fantasy book I've read. I think this is the perfect book to read for that. Next, I read Fourth Wing, which I loved. I think I gave this a 4.25. I gave it a 4.25. I loved the dragons. I loved the plot. It gave me kind of like adult Harry Potter vibes because it was just like the world with the dragons and, you know, the social interactions with all the different people in this school. Maybe I should tell y'all what it's about in case y'all haven't heard. I'm sure you have. But basically it's about this girl named Violet, and she has grown up and she's always was going to go to scribe school, because basically there's like all these different sections of a school that you can go to when you turn 20, and you can go to scribe school, you can go to like medicine school, they call them quadrants, so like the scribe quadrant, the medical quadrant, or it's called like the healer's quadrant, and then there's the dragon quadrant or the rider quadrant, which is the dangerous. A ton of people die like within the first day because you're working with dragons and you're basically training to be a dragon rider and then to fight in wars to protect the country. And she has been training to be a scribe and to go into the scribe quadrant, but then like a few months before, or like maybe not even, maybe like a week before, I can't remember, but right before she's about to go to school, her mom was like, actually, you're gonna go in the rider's quadrant, the most dangerous one. And she goes to the rider quadrant, and she goes to this school and she trains to be a dragon rider. And so there's dragons in it. The dragons can like talk to the riders, which I love. And specifically, what I loved was the main character's character growth. Because Violet at the beginning, she's very much like shy and she's like, I'm gonna die like immediately. And also the author doesn't really go into this like very much, but I think Violet does have a disability, like a physical disability, which the author doesn't really go into much, which I'm curious if she'll go into it more in the next book, so we'll see. But she's very unconfident in herself, but as the book goes on, she gains confidence and she realizes the power that she holds within herself. I would say there were 2 plot twists, or there's like a lot of twists throughout it, but the first one I felt like to me was kind of obvious, but the second plot twist on the very last page got me slamming the book because I was baffled. I was bombarded with the contents of the last page. So I would definitely recommend it. It also, since I'm trying to get more into fantasy, this was also a really good book because I mostly read romance, and this has romance in it, which I love the romance. I loved it so much, and I loved there is a love triangle, and it was so well done, and it was so like it's not even, it was so good. I loved it. And I loved the characters so much. I loved Xaden, which you'll meet him if you read this book. But this book was really easy to understand from someone who's never read fantasy before, besides The Thief, because they go really well into explanation, and there are like some words that they make up for the sake of this book, but the explanation is really well done, and so you understand it all, you don't get confused. It was very straightforward and made sense. So I would definitely recommend. I just loved the world, and I can't wait to go back into it when I read Iron Flame, which is the second. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in September. Now for October. I think the first book I read was an audiobook. Yes. Okay, so the first book I read was I'm Glad My Mom Died, and I listened to that, and I listened to the audiobook where Jeanette McCurdy, who wrote it, she narrates it. And it's a memoir about her life. And if you don't know, Jeanette McCurdy was on iCarly and Sam and Cat. She was a child actor. And that book was so good. Everyone has been talking about it, so I'm sure you've heard of it. But it really does a deep dive on child acting and the ethics of it and if it's really consensual. And then she also talks about addiction, eating disorders. A big part, and what the title is called, is her relationship with her mom and how complicated it is. And it was so good. I loved how when she was narrating, and say she was 8, she was like narrating as if she had like the thoughts of an 8-year-old in that moment. And so when you're listening to it, it's like she's not like it all seems normal to this 8-year-old in the way she's talking, like for example, like some of the things her mom did when she was a child, like you can tell like by the way she's narrating it is that she thought that was normal. She didn't think anything of these things, but as a listener, like listening to this, it's like you know how messed up it was, you know? and how like she was in denial, and she also talks about denial and how she was in denial of how abusive her mother was after her death. And it was just so well done. It was so interesting. I loved the way that Jennette McCurdy like wrote it. I loved her narrating style and her writing style. And it went in chronological order. And it made me want to read more memoirs. I rated it a 4.5. I think I would have cried if I had read it, because something about reading things on a page versus like listening to it makes me cry more. So I definitely would have cried then, but it was so good, and I think everyone should read it. Okay, and then next, continuing with the memoirs, I read The Half of It by Madison Beer. I think I rated this a 3.5. It's a pretty short book. It's a pretty short memoir. Yeah, I rated it a 3.5. The Half of It is about Madison Beer's childhood and life, and it also goes in chronological order. And she talks a lot about the things that happened to her as a child, and moving to LA, and then how she struggled with her mental health over the years. And it was really good. It was really interesting because to me it was like half memoir, half self-help. There was a lot of like research in it, which was interesting, and there was a lot of like her giving advice. Which one thing I really liked was there's journal prompts all throughout it, which is really cool. And so I'm definitely gonna pull this out and use some of these journal prompts. And she also responds to some of her like fans that have asked her stuff, like this, and then she kind of like answers it. So I liked it. The reason why I gave it a 3.5 was the self-help book element of it. I wasn't expecting. I thought it'd be more like I'm Glad My Mom Died, where she's just like talking about her life kind of in like storytelling, but there was a self-help element to it, which I just didn't find as interesting. Next, I think I read a book on my phone. Yes. Okay, next I read The Evidence of the Affair, which is by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And basically I was like on the Kindle app on my phone, and I'd finished the half of it at school, and I wanted like another book to read. And for some reason, The Evidence of the Affair was like free on my Kindle. I think because it's a short story, and they just like made it free. But it is basically a short story by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who wrote Daisy Jones and the Six, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I've read both of those books. But it is a entire short story. It's 88 pages, I think, of letters, and it's set in the 70s, and it's letters, and basically this woman found out that her husband had been cheating with this woman, and so she writes to the husband of the woman who was cheating with her husband. And so now the spouses are writing to each other, and the entire book is just made up of them writing to each other. But it was so interesting and really beautiful, and you could really put yourself in that situation, and it shows like how complicated it can be, and how it's not just a black and white situation when someone cheats, like, oh, you just break up with them, like, or oh, you stay with them. It's not that simple. There's so many things to consider, which I obviously knew that, but to really put myself in their shoes, it was really interesting and really sad. But it was really beautiful how they made a bond together, and they were giving each other advice on the situation. And then the ending I thought was really good and really inspirational. And so it was an unexpected read. I just randomly read it one day on my phone, but it was really good, and I would recommend it. And it's so short. I rated it 4 stars. Next, I read Crave, which I think this took me like 2 weeks to read. And I definitely, if I didn't read this, I could have read like 2 more books. But I gave this a 3.5. Basically, what Crave is about is, it's essentially Twilight but at a boarding school, or Vampire Diaries but at a boarding school, which I don't want to be mean to this author. Like, I don't think they copied it, but it is very similar. But it's about this girl named Grace whose parents died in a car wreck, and she has no other family except this uncle and her cousin, and they live in Alaska. She's from San Diego. So she has to pack up her life in San Diego and move to this tiny town in Alaska where it's freezing cold. And she ends up going to this boarding school where her cousin goes and where her uncle works. Her uncle, I think is the principal or the headmaster of the boarding school. And it's giving her very weird vibes. Like, everyone's staring at her. These guys tried to kill her one night. It's very weird, very creepy. there's all these secrets, but no one, like, everyone keeps hinting at weird things happening, but no one says anything, and people are telling her how she's probably gonna end up dying here, and she's just like, can someone please explain to me what's happening? But basically I'm not gonna say what there are, but there are supernatural things in this book, and I kind of thought that would be disclosed earlier in the book, but it takes a really long time for it to be disclosed. And the ending was very unexpected. It was good. I was intrigued. All this action basically happens at the end, and it's very creepy. I thought this was a good book to read in October because it was very creepy and scary and really set the vibe, especially if you live somewhere cold. This is like, obviously she talked about the freezing temperatures of Alaska a lot. But I don't think I'll continue the series just because I found the characters to be a little, like, not that interesting. Like the Grace wasn't my favorite character. But if you like Twilight, you like Vampire Diaries, I think you'd probably like this and you should give it a try. Last but certainly not least, I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. My mom got me this book. I did not break my book buying ban, but my mom kindly gave this to me, so thank you to her. This is about Mika, and she is a witch. Her name is Mika Moon, which I think is the cutest thing ever. And she's a witch, and so there's this rule that witches aren't supposed to, like, be near each other. If it's too much magic, like if two witches live together, that would be too much magic, and the normal humans would see what was going on. And so Mika lives kind of isolated. She moves around a lot. So for her work, she makes like YouTube videos of pretending to be a witch, which it's like she's basically saying she's a witch, but everyone just thinks she's pretending. And she gets I guess it was like a DM. I think she gets a DM asking if she will come tutor these 3 young witches. And she's very confused. Why are these 3 witches together? That's very sus, very illegal. But she ends up saying yes. And so she goes to this house, it's called Nowhere House, and she tutors these 3 witches. And it is a romance. There is a guy there. His name is Jamie. And it's kind of enemies to lovers. It's more like Grumpy Sunshine. She's like all sunshine and smiles, and he's grumpy and doesn't really like her because he's distrustful and very protective of the 3 witches, of the 3 girls. And I really liked this book. I can't remember what I rated it. This also took me a long time to read. I rated it 4 stars. But it was so, like, cozy and cute, and it was just so cute. It's very much found family, and I loved how the kids were described. I love how the kids were written. I feel like so often authors can write kids poorly, and I hate that. That can just about ruin a book. But I loved these kids. They were described so well, and I could picture each of them in my mind. And it was just such a cute book. I really wish there was a sequel. I don't think there is. Hi guys, my camera died, and so I was filming this video at like 9 a.m. and it is now 5 p.m. But anyway, I was talking about The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and I really liked it. I think you should read it. So those are all the books that I read in September and October. Comment down below how many books you read in October, and let me know your favorite. And I will see y'all next time. As always, I would love video recommendations that y'all want to see, so put those in the comments down below. Bye!